Hello, viewers, and welcome to another edition of the Book Review Blog. The book that I'm going to review today is Danse Macabre by Stephen King. I must apologize. I have a little bit of a cold, so if I am hard to understand, I apologize. But anyway, Danse Macabre is a nonfiction book. In about 1980, 1981 type of thing. Stephen King was teaching a course at the University of Maine, and it was on horror literature and kind of science fiction, other things like that. And somebody had approached him and kind of said, you've been, fairly successful as a writer of this horror genre. Why don't you write a nonfiction book about horror? And he kind of pawed on it for a little bit and decided, that's a good idea. Let's write a book about the horror genre in general, from radio, TV, and movies. And so he decided to do it from 1950 to 1980, which was, again, the present at the time. And basically, this book is his take on the horror genre in general, and he starts off with a chapter on horror movies. He starts with, or goes on with horror books, and mixes in some radio and things in both of those chapters. It was strange to read because I don't consider myself a lover of horror. I know that's very strange to hear because I'm such a big Stephen King fan, but other than his books, I really haven't read anything else, especially read. I've seen movies, but there's not a lot of horror movies that I've seen, and especially now, there's not a lot of movies that when I see them, being previewed on TV, I think, oh, that's a good idea. I should go see that. Unless it's a movie based on one of Stephen King's books. However, I did understand a little bit of his book. I did recognize most of the movies that he talked about. He talked about the Amityville Horror, The Exorcist, other things like that. He did talk more about the Rosemary's Baby as a book rather than a movie. I don't remember if he mentioned if he had liked the movie, but it was funny because there's a part in this book where he asks you to take a little quiz, and he'll give you little scenarios of the plots of movies, and he'll say, if you score, this is 20 questions and it's out of 100 points. So if you score an 80% or above, then you really know your horror genre. If you score maybe a 70 or a 60 or below, then there's really no reason for you to be reading this book. And I found that funny because I kind of took the quiz as I was reading it, and I believe I scored a 25, which is not good. So therefore I only knew about 5 of the book or movies that he was referring to. So I wholeheartedly agree with him that this was not the book for me personally. If you enjoy the horror genre in general, I would recommend you read this book. One of my complaints was that it's heavily dated. Again, he did from the years 1950 to 1980. Now, I would love for him to do a sequel, I guess, from 1980 to 2010, or if we're going from another 30 years, or to 2013. I think if you get the newest version of this book, there is a foreword, because I read this book via audiobook, and there was a long thing before where he did mention movies up to, I'm not sure, where he mentioned a lot of contemporary movies on whether he liked them or not. So that was really nice to hear, but for me, if he would put out another book of this nature where he would do the movies from 1980 to, let's say, again, 2010 or 2013, then I would be more apt to read that and more interested to read it. And I've read what I've read on it so far. I think people do agree with me in that fact that he should write an updated version. So that's it for this book. Again, it was very short. It's a very short review. Again, I'm going to recommend it if you are a fan of the horror genre, and not like me where you're just a fan of Stephen King. If you're like that, then this book really isn't for you. But again, if you're a fan of the horror genre, I recommend reading this book. So you'll learn a lot. The next book that I'm going to read by Stephen King is Cujo. And so that's it. I bid you all farewell and happy reading.